speaking of fan bases that think that they're dominant but have not had a lot of success lately, and that is your favorite city of Boston. Boston has had a very, very unique past few weeks. Actually, I would say probably past 6 weeks. So in that time frame, the historic Bruins lost to a plucky Florida Panthers team who is now in the Stanley Cup final. And the other day, the Boston Celtics, who were down 0-3 to the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals, won three straight to get to Game 7, only to lose Game 7 at home by 20 points. And on top of that, apparently in the NCAA Lacrosse Championship, Women's Lacrosse Championship, Northwestern beat Boston College to take home that prize. So Boston has not had a good time of it, and I would venture a guess that nationally everybody's celebrating.
Yeah, nationally, Boston is easy to root against. I personally, I don't have a lot of shade to throw at the city of Boston. I was rooting for them in '04 when they won the World Series. Being an underdog, being a Cubs fan, I love people overcoming history, right? Like the championship droughts and things like that. Unless it's the Toronto Maple Leafs, apparently. Uh, you know, I, at the same time, it's not so much the franchises in Boston that I have a problem with. It's the fan bases. I mean, they've become so arrogant and have anointed themselves, right? And Title Town and whatever else. And
Yep.
it's nice to see karma work its way around the block and put people like that in their place and give them a little taste of what it's like to not be at the top of the food chain for once.
Is that what it is, though, when you get to a city that is mostly disliked on a national level? At some point, it becomes the fans almost 100% of the time, right? Like there are teams that you end up hating or loving to hate. And there are teams. I mean, the Bad Boy Pistons are a perfect example. Those guys played rough. They were just assholes, basically. And that's how they wanted to be portrayed, and that's how they played. And sure, you can hate on a team, but I think mostly the fans, especially when success comes. And that's really the crux of this is the fact that, let's take the Celtics, for instance. On Basketball U last week with Matt, I said that the Celtics are like the Cowboys of the NBA. They lean on all of that history, all those championships from a very long time ago. They have one championship since 1986, and that's not getting it done. And for you to have a lot of bravado and not really have those results, your fans become more like assholes every single second because there isn't a lot of results in the now that justify that feeling. And man, every time this comes up, I always feel like I escape some sort of like a prisoner situation or something because you would think that I would be all about this, right? That I would be all in Boston camp and I would be a homer. And yet I'm not because I see it for what it is. But I want to tell you that I had an epiphany last week after the recording was over. I realized what my problem is. And I want you to bear with me. So the Boston Celtics have had unprecedented success in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. They won, 16 or 17 championships? I can't remember what the number is. And they had 40 years, basically, of success to the point that they won almost half of the championships in that time period. That's pretty amazing. The New England Patriots, for 20 years with Tom Brady, won 6 Super Bowls. The Red Sox have had 4 World Series in the last 20 years. And the Bruins in the 70s were great, and they've only had 1 Stanley Cup since then. But it's a lot of success for one city. And outside of maybe New York and LA, has any other city really had that kind of success? And for these fans to not realize that and still act this way, that's my problem. And I finally can articulate it. I feel free. Salvation is here.
Well, it's nice that you feel liberated from your Boston fandom or I don't know hatred of Boston fandom. But you're right. When I sit here and think about it, what other city has been fortunate enough to win as many championships across all sports as Boston? And like you said, outside of looking like going way back in New York and Los Angeles and stuff like that, I don't know if there is another city. I was kind of sitting there kicking around for a little bit. I'm like, well, like Pittsburgh and the Steelers and people, but the Pirates have been terrible for a really long time.
And the Penguins have been good, obviously.
Yeah,
But I'm saying the amount of success that they've had over 70 years, no city can claim that. And
no,
all the cities that do have fans that have the same problem. But actually, Yankees fans, at least I think, are a little bit more humbled because of what happened in '04.
I don't know if I'd go that far. Um, I would almost, without honestly spending a lot of time around either one of these fan bases personally, I would have to say on the scale of insufferableness, the Yankees fans are probably worse than Red Sox fans.
Ooh,
You don't think so?
I don't know. I
You
mean,
think
well,
Yankees
y
fans are more, like, sophisticated? Is that what it is? Are Red
I
Sox fans just a bunch of dudes from Southie or what?
timeout. First of all, I did not say sophisticated, and that's not. But I think what's going to end up happening here is we're going to let the YouTube gods decide this because that clip is going to be put out, and we're going to find out which fan base is more obnoxious. But I think that each fan base probably has their section of the fandom that is awful. And I think if you're looking at which one is worse, it's hard to argue that the Red Sox fans or like Boston fans now aren't worse right now because they've had more success recently. Like the Yankees, they won a World Series in 2009. I think the Giants won a Super Bowl in 2011. So it's been a little bit since there has been championship success there. And for the Rangers, it's been way longer than that. The Red Sox have had a couple of World Series and Super Bowls in that time period. So there's recent success, and so for this attitude to be so horrible, I mean, I get it. Your teams lose. And we talked about this, I think, the last time we were on here, maybe two times before, when, it's about fandom and how far do you go. But that's it. That's it. And so for them to have all of this sadness because their teams are losing, I think it's a good thing for the fan base. And I say that with the nicest intentions for seriously, except for you guy from Southeast. Screw you.
That's wonderful. It's funny because here locally, like, one of the, kind of the closest dynamics to that I can think of would be like Bears fans, Packer fans. Obviously, the Packers have the championships to show for it. That's a big one this area. Cubs and Sox, Cubs and White Sox, and that's one that I think that I don't know, man. If you're a White Sox fan, if you live in Chicago and you're a White Sox fan, you must just hate yourself and just subject yourself to like punishment. Like it's the only way I can explain it. And then Cubs and Cardinals is a big thing, and that's one thing that's interesting about the state of Illinois is if you live in Chicago, it's straight up Cubs Sox. Like they don't. I mean, they don't give a shit about the Cardinals if you live in Chicago. It's Cubs Sox. But the rest of the state of Illinois, you're either a Cubs fan or a Cardinals fan, typically. It's a very interesting dynamic. And that is sort of one of those where there is and rightfully so, but there certainly is a level of arrogance that comes along with being a Cardinals fan amongst Cubs fans. Stereotypically, I would say that most Cardinal fans are those that kind of walk around with their nose turned up in the air a little bit. Now, that's from a Cubs fan perspective. But I will say this, though. Realistically, Cardinals fans are some of the best fans in all of sports, not just baseball. They're very knowledgeable about the game. They appreciate greatness, even if it comes from someone who's not on their team. Cubs fans are a mix of people who are passionate about the game, uh, and then people who wanted to do the cool thing about 15 years ago when the Cubs sort of started becoming a little competitive and relevant, and they just kind of clung on to it because they lived in Chicago or Illinois somewhere.
What's great about that is when I did Flashing the Leather with my boy Jonesy, he talked about how the Cardinals weren't doing very well this year, and he was very happy about it. So there are some teams that you just love to hate. I guess it depends on your perspective. But so that is my salvation. And I know that there is